What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove right here on the channels and on X. And guess what, guys? We are not trying to figure out what is going on. We actually know what's going on this time on a Mets Hot Stove. Thank you for tuning into the channels and the show, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, as the new face of the New York Mets is Bichette. We'll get into that. We'll get into the Tucker craziness and nonsense that went on over the last 48 hours. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yesterday was kind of gloomy with the whole Tucker situation, and now, not 24 hours after the fact, we have a strong pivot point for David Stearns and the New York Mets, and a deal that is well within the parameters that they wanted to operate within, especially with the short-term deal in the years. And we'll get into that here in just a second, but clearly this is a move that is supposed to kickstart a flurry of moves given the holes that are still present on this roster. I really love this addition for the New York Mets, but there needs to be more things coming, especially on the trade market for presumably pitching. We'll get into that here in just a second as well. But you know what, Rob? This was a great way to start the day. I'll say that. We both did streams, and I'm satisfied. I'm pretty happy with this.
Yeah, I love the bat, right? Defensively, it's a work in progress at this point, right? He's going to play third base. That leaves Beatty up in the air at this point. We'll definitely get into that. Is he tradable? Is he going to be part of a first base platoon? So much that we have to talk about. But the bat there's no doubt about the bat. He's going to help this lineup. And what I loved even more about it was that the Phillies thought they had him. That made it a little more sweeter, right? Knowing that, I think it was Bob Nightingale that said that they it 7 years, 200 million, and they thought they had him last night. And the Mets were like, nah, we don't. No, you don't. And we took him. So that was a little bit of icing on the cake for that. But overall, the player is good. Again, changing positions. He's not a great glove. He's not really that. I guess you could say he's slightly above average type of glove. Not, as a shortstop, now playing third base, as we all think he's going to play third base. It is a work in progress. That run prevention goes out the window. Let's be honest about that. Can't have Polanco at first or Beatty at first and moving positions for Bichette and talk about run prevention as something that is, a main fold or actually a philosophy used in what they're trying to do here. Now it's like plan C or whatever plan it might be. The plan is all over the place at this point, but you know what? As long as we get the players to make this team better, I don't really care what plan it is. Honestly, I was pissed off yesterday. Everybody saw late at night what I was talking about on the breaking news stream. You were on the stream as well. Look, I think we have to start off with Kyle Tucker because it was less than 24 hours ago where it seemed like the Mets were on the verge of getting him. And I said it throughout the boat watch parties, day one and day two. There was something going on with Toronto that Kyle Tucker did not want to go because the long-term deal was on the table this whole time. There was nobody else giving that long-term deal. If he was so serious about the long-term deal, he would have been a Blue Jay. There was something about going to Toronto. I don't know if it was his wife being, like 8.5 months pregnant, or his family in general just didn't want to go there, or he didn't want to go there. Toronto seemed like it was like in third place. And it seemed like more and more that the short-term deal was going to be what he was going to choose. And we didn't hear nothing from the Dodgers. We know they were involved, Chris, but they lingered again. But not saying that I'm mad at the Mets about this because I think they gave a more than fair offer on the short-term deal. It's a hell of a lot of money that they offered, but they still left an opening for another team like the Dodgers. You can't play game. You can't leave an opening for the Dodgers. I think the Mets should learn this. If it ain't the one time with Diaz this offseason, don't leave anything to question if the Dodgers are possibly involved because you will get burned. They will take that player from you, Chris. And they did it last night with Kyle Tucker. And it's unfortunate. I think we would have all been okay with Kyle Tucker. Some people would have complained about the money. But at the end of the day, you want the player, you get the player. And once again, the Mets left a little bit of opening, and the Dodgers swooped in and took him away.
Well, from my understanding with the way this played out and the details that followed after, I mean, we went through on your stream, I was in the comment section, we were kind of going, back and forth about the contract parameters of what he got with LA and what, the Mets offered. But it's hard to envision the Mets having that kind of offer And from the sounds of it, Kyle Tucker took that offer, which is $60 million for the first 2 seasons. It was a little bit front loaded. And then they had the 50 something million dollars in the back end, no deferments from the New York Mets. So you're talking about present day money there with nothing deferred. And he took that offer and took it to the Dodgers. They beat it. And I'm not sure if the Mets were ever even given a chance to match that. And honestly, probably for the better at this point, because it's just another case of these players and these agencies using the Mets as leverage to go get a deal with the Dodgers. And that's just the bottom line. So in terms of the offer that the Mets had, yeah, it was $20 million less. We're talking about 220 versus 240. I get it. The structure of it makes it just as competitive in my eyes, especially with the no deferments there. These players clearly don't care about the deferments. But we were very honest with everybody saying that the situation there in LA is just night and day different, better, especially for the type of player and presumably what we know about Kyle Tucker, the type of person that he is, a little bit more laid back and doesn't really want all the eyes on him, which would have been the case alongside Juan Soto. And now he gets to blend into a lineup that has Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, etc. And so that's just something that you can't help. But with the Mets offering what they did, that showed everybody that they were truly serious about that. And the fact that Kyle Tucker used that to go to LA and they beat it out and they didn't even get a chance to counter offer. I'm not sure if David Stearns and Steve Cohen would have matched that offer, but let's just say they do. In the event that they offered the same exact deal, do we really still think Kyle Tucker was coming to Queens? The answer to that is probably absolutely not. So yeah, the Dodgers did lurk. They lurked and preyed on the New York Mets, and the same thing with the Toronto Blue Jays. And with the Blue Jays, like you said, I just don't think he ever wanted to go there. I don't think he ever wanted to go across the line and play to Canada, or play in Canada. I don't think a lot of these players do. They've built a really good foundation there, and some players are willing to do it, but we know that this has been a common theme and problem with them with free agents in the past. It just seems like that is not the prime destination for, I guess, in the eyes of some players, and you just simply can't change that fact. Just like the geographic location of LA is awesome, right? And everybody wants to go there with a lot of the recent free agents that the Dodgers have been able to acquire. So that's out of the control of any organization where they're playing at. But I really do think it came down to the situation. Tucker had his eyes set on LA this whole entire time. The reporters just didn't know it. They kept it close. He got the Mets offer. He drove the price up, and the Dodgers ultimately were the ones to come out on top because the Mets probably were never given a chance to go ahead and counter offer. At this point, knowing what we know now with Bichette, I don't know. I'm not going to say the Mets are better off, but I think that I'm happy with the aggressive pivot if this is not the only bat that comes into the fold for the Mets.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And listen up, guys. I'm going to give credit to David Stearns here. Be careful. All right. I know you might be shocked by this. It might hurt your eardrums a little bit, but I like the quick pivot, aggressive quick pivot. I'm glad you said that because that was the next thing I was going to say. I love the quick pivot because this happened quickly because the Phillies and the Bichette had a deal last night. So this happened quickly. Now, maybe they already had, some type of conversations with Bo and his agent in regards to, hey, listen, if this doesn't work out with Tucker, we're going to be right in on you. And clearly he was willing to take, $46 million a year, depending on if he opts out, but it's for 1 year at least. So he's going to make a tremendous amount of money and still go on the market. What is he, 27 years old? So he's going to go on the market at 28, 29. Wonderful, right? That's great for him. Makes buku bucks, and he's going to go right back on the market to probably get a long-term deal. Not a Met, that's for sure, but definitely going to make a lot of money in the next free agency period. So I love the pivot. Like, again, we don't know if we're better off, right? We don't know, right? Tucker can come here and be 10 times better than Bo Bichette, but everybody cares about home runs, right? Everybody was talking about, Tucker's never hit 30 home runs. He's like a 26 to 27 home run guy, nothing crazy, no huge power. Bo Bichette doesn't have huge power, right? He doesn't. But what is he? There's two things that he really does well, right? High average, low strikeouts. And by the way, he had over 90 RBIs this year with only hitting 18 home runs. So what does that tell you? That tells you this guy puts the bat on the ball with runners on base and runners in scoring position. What did the Mets have a problem with last year? Putting the ball in play with runners on base, especially with runners in scoring position. So you only have him and Jorge Polanco, who aren't high strikeout guys. That balances out a lineup where you're going to get Juan Soto, who doesn't strike out a 10. I know last year he did, but he usually doesn't strike out a lot. And it kind of balances out the Lindor high strikeouts. And we'll figure out what the rest of the lineup's going to be. Obviously, it's still yet to be determined. But with this Bo Bichette signing, I was a little confused at first. I love the sign-in. I love the pivot. But what did everybody think about? Another fucking infielder, right? That was what we all thought about. We're like, wait a second here. And then everybody started to go, oh, Beatty's gone. Vientos is gone. This guy's gone. They're making a big trade. I think it has to happen at this point now. Now, I'm not saying they have to trade Beatty. They can move Beatty over to first base, as I said in the opening. They can move Beatty to first base. Honestly, Beatty has the frame of a first baseman because he's lanky and tall. I think he can be fine. He's already moved multiple positions already. I think he can do it. But are the Mets thinking that? Is Beatty part of every deal possible that a team wants for a starting pitcher? Because I think Framber Valdez is out, by the way, only because with Bo Bichette qualifying offer, I think they lose a second and a fifth round pick for qualifying with the draft with the compensation picks. I don't think they're going to lose. I think it's a 3 and a 4 or something like that. It's another 2 picks if they sign Framber Valdez. So I don't think they're going to get Framber Valdez.
But don't they get something back in return for Edwin Diaz going to LA?
Did the Mets give him a qualifying offer?
Yeah.
Then they probably do. I don't know what they got back. I'm assuming it's kind of similar because it depends on what bracket the free agent is, right? Whatever, what tier they are. I think they probably got a 2 and a 4 as well. So maybe this kind of balances it out and they didn't technically lose anything except for wherever they're obviously the Dodgers are picking a little bit later than us, but wherever the position is, technically this Bo Bichette signing with the compensation picks kind of balances it out, I guess. So yeah, could they get Framber Valdez? I mean, they can do anything they want, but where is the next move going to be? Because even if you put Beatty at first base and Polanco's your everyday DH that blocks Vientos, here we go with Mauricio and Acuna on the bench again. That does not work. I don't think these guys are bench players at all. At all. I don't think Mauricio is a guy that can sit on the bench for 2 days and then come up 2 days later and say, here you go, play. Same thing with Acuna. Same thing with Vientos. These guys need to play every day. And they're not going to do that here at this moment. Right now, there's no room for any of these 3 guys. I'm not saying to trade all 3 of them. Maybe they're more confident in Vientos coming off the bench with a big bat, playing sporadically than Mauricio and Acuna. But there's got to be a trade, Chris. It makes no sense if they don't trade some of these guys to bring in somebody. I don't know if it's going to be for a starting pitcher, but maybe it is an outfielder. Is it, if they don't go after Cody Bellinger, maybe they go after a Duran or Luis Robert or something like that. But they still got holes in the outfield at this point. So what do you think they do at this point? I know we talked about it briefly before we came on, but what do you think they do? Because they have to move some infield.
Yeah, I think that you have to go ahead and make a trade for starting pitching. I think that is probably the number one priority. I wouldn't put it past them if Framber is still, open to taking that short-term deal. And if the Mets really just don't care about, losing what you lose out on and getting the second QO player this offseason, because the Dodgers just did it with Diaz and Tucker. And according to our guy, Tony Metro, he released a crazy good short clip talking about how no team has ever done that. And of course, the Dodgers go ahead and do it. But could the Mets follow that up at this point and do it themselves and get 2 QO players this offseason? It's not usually within their MO to do that. So maybe I would be shocked even if they get some of that compensation back from losing Edwin Diaz. But we'll see, because, with Ranger Suarez off the table and needing to dip into your prospect pool, that, makes things so much harder. But I think we both were under the assumption that there was going to be at least one trade for a starter at any point this offseason. So, and before we even talk about that, I actually sent you something on X in DMs about Keith Rad and what he tweeted about these hitters that the Mets have acquired this offseason, and Bichette being the latest one with career numbers with runners in scoring position. Do you see that graphic? Oh, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I was driving, so I saw you post message me, but I didn't see it.
Yeah. So you look at and if you guys don't follow Keith Rad, make sure to go follow him over on X. He gives the career numbers of runners in scoring position of Bichette, Polanco, and Simeon versus that of, I think, Pete, Jeff McNeil, and was it Nimmo was the third guy. And it's quite a drastic difference. And what do we spend all of 2025 complaining about on our streams and people in our comments? Like, what was the common theme with this offense? It was failure after failure after failure with runners in scoring position. So I understand that they're not household names. I mean, Bichette he's a star. Let's make no mistake about that with his bat. But Polanco and Simeon aren't really, household names, I would think, at this point of their career, but they know how to hit the ball with runners in scoring position. And that is going to play very well for this lineup moving forward in 2026. So, and other things to like about Bichette, the clutch numbers, I said it in my stream earlier. If you missed that, go check it out. But 2 outs, runners in scoring position, tie ball games, late and close ball games in 2025. All of these numbers with the bat, Bichette was elite in. You add that with 45 doubles. He's a gap-to-gap hitter. No, he's not going to give you consistently upwards of 25 home runs. He's more of an 18 to 22 home run candidate. But if he's doing all these other things with the bat and checks all the other boxes, why are we so pressed on how many home runs he hits, right? You're going to get home runs with Lindor. You're going to get home runs with Soto. You would have to imagine Polanco is going to go for upwards of 20 as well. You're adding another guy that can get to that 20 mark, and that will play out just fine. I need guys that know how to hit in the clutch, and I need guys that know how to hit with runners in scoring position. And that's exactly what David Stearns went out there and did. Now we have to talk about the positional fits, like you said. And this is where everyone has question marks. You're going to have 2 guys at this point, unless something drastic happens and they go out there and get a first baseman. Because I've been talking about Yandy Diaz. A lot of people have been talking about Yandy Diaz or somebody else that we're just not thinking of right now. Unless they go ahead and do that and make Polanco a DH, you are going to have a corner infield of 2 players that have never played at that respective position on the diamond. But you also will have a Gold Glove double play duo up the middle in Simeon and Lindor. You'll have good defense guaranteed with Benj and Tyrone Taylor in center field. And if Benj is your left fielder, so be it. That's good defensively. We just don't know what we're going to get offensively. And that's where this signing of Bichette, a lot of people have been talking about. I like it hands down. A lot of people are saying this is a panic move for them, though, because of that run prevention aspect that David Stearns has been preaching. Sure, if you want to go that far, but the Mets did what they had to do here. Let's make no mistake about it. They did what they had to do, and they did what we've been complaining about all off season and reaching into their wallets and getting a guy that really they've been eyeing all along. They had the preference in Kyle Tucker, but as Will Salmon reported just a couple of minutes ago, they established this connection with Bichette all the way back in the GM meetings of the offseason, so back in late November. And they had him on their minds with other preferences first and foremost. They let the markets play out, and the best part about this is that the Phillies were willing to give him a long-term 7-year deal. And that is the funniest thing about it. You go on social media, every Phillies fan was like, this is awesome because Tucker was supposed to go to the Mets, and now we're getting Bo. And it was a parade in Philly in the offseason. And this is hilarious because Bo signed for 3 years instead of the 7-year deal and the long-term deal that he presumably wanted. And also the contract structure of this Bichette deal is kind of interesting because you have opt-outs after the first and second year, but I do think the Mets can go ahead and bypass. I'm not sure if they need Bo's approval. This is where I get kind of iffy on this, but if they make it $47 million per year instead of 42, I think they can bypass the opt-out from the team's perspective. I have to do a little bit more digging into that, but Heyman mentioned there's some sort of $5 million buyout of the opt-out, and I'm assuming what he means by that is if the Mets want to pay him $5 million more, he'll get paid $47 million, and then he won't opt out. I just don't know if that's his choice or the team's choice. So, they can void it like with Soto's deal by adding $5 million. Okay, so if that's the case, like Zach is saying, that means the Mets hold the power, whether this is a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, or a full 3-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. So, which changes the ballgame. It changes everything about this deal.
That means they really have to trade an infielder then, because it's not a whole 1-year deal situation if the Mets have control over the opt-out. Because So they have to at this point, because you're sitting everybody on the bench at this point. Like if Jorge Polanco is going to be your first baseman, Beatty, Vientos, Acuna, and Mauricio are all on the bench. Like that's not me being an ass. This is just reality at this point. So listen, I love that, because what it does, it protects them with the comp picks that they just gave up, even though it kind of balanced out with the Diaz situation with the Dodgers. So again, I haven't. I looked at my phone probably like 3 times today when I went live in the car and when I saw the Bichette contract. But I haven't looked at I was driving all day today, so it was just all over the place. So I really haven't been on my phone that much today, so I couldn't really get the details. But that's a great detail to know, right? I'm thinking about a 1-year deal situation here, and you bring this up. It's like, oh, so it looks even better. You know, fuck the Phillies, and we took them away, and now we can have him 3 years, which is great because you got him in his prime at 27 years old.
Yeah.
This is the best part, because you don't have to rely. I know everybody wants to talk about these prospects or former prospects that are on the major league level now. You don't have to worry about them being what we think they can be. It's not even just a backup plan anymore. This guy's a part of your core for at least the next 3 years. And that's important, because Lindor, Soto, Bichette, that is a nasty 1, 2, 3. I mean, wherever they're going to be placed in the lineup, I would assume they would be 1, 2, 3 in this lineup.
I think so, as of right now, at least.
And then, okay, you could put Polanco 4th, maybe Semien 5th, or you put Semien 2nd, like a lot of people did in the lineup when we got Semien. Here's the thing: you already got a 1 through 5. The Mets didn't have 1 through 5 last year; it had 1 through 4. And already, how many times have we spoken about? It doesn't matter what the end results are when it comes to stats for all these players, because 1 through 4, we probably had the one best 1 through 4 in baseball when it came to overall numbers. We were hitting balls all over the place. The home runs were crazy for this 1 through 4 team last year. But it's when you hit them, and when did you get those hits? Not the home runs, but hits with runners on base and clutch with runners in scoring position. You just gave the numbers. Like, these guys can be better without hitting more home runs. Like I just said, 18 home runs, 92 or 94 RBIs. That's a lot of bat on ball. And having over a 300 average, that's even better. Like, this is what we didn't have. We had guys who were 250 hitters, occasionally 260, but career-wise, mostly 250, 255 hitters. You got guys that are 275, 280, 300 hitters. That's a huge difference when it comes to Polanco and at least Bo Bichette. That is a huge difference. Like, it's a 30 to 40 point average difference with Nimmo and Alonso. Like, that's a huge gap. And yeah, the home runs might make people excited, but hit a fucking base hit with somebody on base. You know what I'm saying? With somebody on second base. You know, sack, slide, something, put in the bat on the ball. And I think I saw a stat with Bo Bichette and Jorge Polanco. They had like 172 strikeouts between the both of them with 1,000 at-bats, when Pete Alonso and Nimmo had like 270 something. It was a crazy number. Like, it was a huge difference. I don't know where I saw that, but I saw that right when I was walking into my house to see, you know, what the hell's going on. That's a huge gap. Like, those less strikeouts mean they're putting the ball in play somewhere. And again, we know what happens in baseball when you put the ball in play. Shit happens. When you strike out, nothing happens. So, look, it's an upgrade. It's just a matter of what they're going to do next, I think is going to make this move even better. Because if you trade for a starting pitcher, a top line starter, Peralta, Skubal, name your pitcher. That's a top line starter. Removing some of this infield that you would have to get rid of, along with probably maybe one of the prospect pitchers, it helps the process of looking at this team and saying, okay, this team can be a playoff team. This team can be better than a playoff team with Nolan McLean and, let's say, Freddie Peralta leading the rotation. I think that's what we're looking at, right? 48 hours ago, we're like, Jesus Christ, like this team's a 75-win team at best with a shitty rotation. We still got the shitty rotation and we still got holes, but it's looking a little bit more brighter because it looks like the Mets are trying to bring in proven talent. And we'll see if they continue to add to that proven talent.
I did do some research on the Bichette contract, and of course, I mean, it would be much easier if John Heyman does his job and gives us the actual wording to make us realize what is actually going on. So it is not like Juan Soto's contract, unfortunately. I did some digging here. He will get paid an additional $5 million from the Mets if he does opt out. The Mets have no control over that or not, which is a weird stipulation to put in a contract. I'm not sure why the Mets would do that. But anyways, so if Bo opts out in either year 1 or year 2, he's going to get an additional $5 million from the New York Mets, which doesn't make sense. But
so the Mets want him to opt out, basically.
Well, then they would have to pay $5 million on top of that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like he has control over the opt out, or if he stays with the contract, they give him the $5 million. Or
no, if he stays, he's just getting paid the 42. But if he opts out, he's getting paid 47 for the 1 year.
Well, I'd opt out too. I would give me
well, right. Well, right. Well, so the thing is with that is the way that he's opting out, unless he completely has a mirror image type of season as his 2024 campaign, which was brutal statistically, and I guess injuries combined, then he probably won't opt out because he has one more chance to go at it again in 2027. But if he produces anything close to what he produced last season, of course he's opting out. I mean, there's no incentive for him not to at age 28. Then you can start talking about an 8 to 10 year deal for Bo Bichette. And at that point, unless the Mets are really convinced of his bat long term and his ability to show something at third base with the glove, I also don't think that they'll give him an extension. So a little bit of a weird contract, and that probably, it might, I'm not saying it will completely, but it might deter the New York Mets from trading Brett Baty because you're really only guaranteed 1 year of Bo Bichette with this contract structure. Or they might, trust a guy that is coming up fastly through the wings of this farm system and Jacob Reimer as being insurance at that position, in place of Brett Baty. So I don't know. Weird situation, but like you said, the bat is undeniable, and we will see what happens from here. And as Zach is saying in the chat, Pat Ragazzo did drop an article saying that the New York Mets are still in on Cody Bellinger. They are not out on the Cody Bellinger sweepstakes.
Honestly, they should be.
They should be. Can you imagine this lineup? This is like, I'm not saying that's Dodgers-esque, but that is second right behind the Dodgers in terms of best lineup in baseball.
We're talking about 1 through 6 in this lineup.
For sure. And if you go ahead and add in maybe a bounce back season from Alvarez and see what Benj can provide you, right, in center field on a platoon basis, that's money. That's money. The only issue here, right, as we kind of, we'll talk about everybody. We'll talk about Bellinger, maybe talk about some other starting pitchers. But, I still am very speculative on this happening with Bellinger because the Yankees have done squat this entire offseason. Like, they've signed a Mexican League MVP. They've signed Paul Blackburn and Ahmed Rosario. What'd you say?
Former Mets.
Former Mets, right? The scraps that everybody likes to talk about in the inverse relationship. So if they let Cody go, that fan base is going to erupt.
Well, you know what? I don't think the Yankees are budging off them 5 years. So
they have 5 years, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, but can the Mets do what they did with Bo Bichette and offer him an opt-out after year 1? And
it would have to be stupid money like Bo Bichette, though. Another 40 plus
right?
million.
Look, you were going to go 60 million basically with Tucker a year. You give him 42. Let's just say they give him $40 million as well. Like, okay, who cares? Like, they're probably coming off the books the next year anyway. So it's not in long term. And again, they're not afraid of going high AAV, clearly.
Right.
Right? They were willing to pivot to Bo Bichette. Like, it would be more fun because the Yankees fans would be crying, and we always love that. But, just the way the Philly fans thought they had Bo Bichette in their pockets and we took them, I would just love it. Not only it's going to make our lineup better, and our lineup will be as deep as it was probably since 2022. Let's be honest about that. Like, that's a big deal. Like, you have how many guys can hit 20 home runs easily in this lineup with Cody Bellinger? Like, that's not including Alvarez, the possibility of Beatty being in this lineup still if he plays first base and Polanco's the DH or Beatty's the DH, whatever, right? All these guys, like, you can go 1 through 8, and all these guys can hit home runs. And you know what? I don't mind Tyrone Taylor batting ninth and playing center field. You know what I'm saying? Because you could put Bellinger at first base, left field, wherever you got to play him. And Tyrone Taylor's probably going to get a ton of playing time. I mean, in my opinion, I'd rather put Bellinger at first base and use Carson Bench and Tyrone Taylor in left and center. I think that would be fine. You could put, Polanco with DH, and what you're going to do with Vientos and Beatty. I don't know. Like, that just makes for a trade for a starting pitcher. I know it's mostly possibly both 1-year deals, because I don't think the Mets are going to go 5+. I don't think they're going to match the Yankees offer. Put it that way. I think the only way to get Cody Bellinger, and if it's true that what's being reported, the Mets are still in on Cody Bellinger, they have to do a Bo Bichette kind of deal. That's the only way I see them getting Cody Bellinger, or they're going to trade for a Luis Robert, or just bring in a stopgap like a Harrison Bader, maybe a Lance Nootbaar, somebody like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the only way they get Cody too, because the differential of what he's asking for is that 2 years with what the current offer for from the Yankees is, and that 5-year deal that they have on the table. So there's no way that the Mets would be able to. I mean, they would be able to if they really wanted to. They could go a long-term deal, but they don't want to do that. It's very clear that they don't want to do that. So let's just say you give Bellinger, I don't know, a Bichette type of deal. $40+ million per year with the same structure, the same opt-outs. He's 30 years old. He'll be 31 next year. He has the ability to go back out onto the market at 31. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see it. I mean, I can definitely see that happening, and that's the only way that it will happen. But now you have another desperate, hungry, pissed off team in the Toronto Blue Jays that are probably also going to be offering a pretty hefty bag, and they're going to be whatever their offer was for Tucker. I'm not saying it's going to, this is for sure, but you'd have to imagine a portion or maybe even all of that money might be allocated to putting an offer on the table for Cody Bellinger to just take him away from the New York Yankees. So
no reason not to try.
Right, absolutely. So that's a tricky situation. Pat Ragazzo is the one reporting that. We've had Pat Ragazzo on the show before. He does a great job always. So we'll see what comes of that. Do I expect it to happen? Probably not, but that would be sweet, man. You get Belly and you go out there and get a guy like Peralta, and I'm ready to freaking rock, man. I don't care about Tucker. I don't care about what the Dodgers are doing. You're going to war with LA at that point, and it would just be nice.
It's a solid team. Like, again, baseball is such a unique sport where, anybody can look great on paper, right? The Dodgers look like world beaters on paper. Doesn't matter. They were an inch away from losing last year. Like, they weren't the better team in the World Series. They weren't. They still won, which you get, obviously, who cares at that point? But they weren't the better team. Like, anybody can be beaten in baseball, which is the beautiful part. As I said many times, the MLB playoffs is like the NHL playoffs now. You make it, everybody has a chance. This isn't the NBA where, the top teams usually are going to make the championships and going to win. The NFL, it's kind of wide open this year, but it's usually the best teams that are usually the ones that are going to make it to the end, to the Super Bowl, and that's just how it goes. But baseball is so unique with so many games during the season, so many long series during the playoffs. Anything can happen. All you need is 1 or 2 hot pitchers, somebody that comes out of nowhere, like a Tommy Edman type that just becomes an MVP in the playoffs. Anything can happen. That's why you don't always need to be the best team on paper. You just got to have the right fit. And how many times have we talked about this, Chris, with the Mets' old core? They never felt like they fit together, lineup wise. It just felt like it was just a constant like maneuver, or like it just went in circles with this core. It just never felt like it fit. Now I'm not telling you that the Bichette, Bellinger, Soto, Simeon, Polanco, Lindor, all those guys are going to fit. We have no idea. This is another change of a clubhouse, right? Inside the dugout, we don't know. These guys might not get along, but we know Bichette and Simeon used to play together. So that is something that, okay, these guys know each other, right? Lindor and Soto, year 2. We know how bad Lindor was with, basically being an outsider when he first got here. But he kind of like, I know we heard a lot of things about him, but, maybe Soto and Lindor maybe have that rapport together this year. Like, there's a lot of things that are going on, but it's a totally different clubhouse. It really is. So it's just a matter of, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here when it comes to Bellinger, but I mean, everything's on the table at this point. The Mets are willing to spend money, right? They already spent $160 million this offseason, even though it hasn't felt like it prior to Bo Bichette. I think they spent $111 million prior to the Bo Bichette sign-in. They were, and it felt like we're still a 75-win team. Spending all that money and you still feel like you haven't gotten better is, demoralizing. But getting Bo Bichette and seeing that the Mets are in on Bellinger, they're probably in on other outfielders that we're not even knowing about when it comes to trade possibilities and the possibility of getting a top line starter. I mean, this team can look a lot different 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I mean, it can even look a lot different even without Bellinger too. It's just
Sure.
probably the top name on the market, but there's other trade options out there, probably not as good unless you're talking about and revisiting the conversation of Byron Buxton, which I don't even want to open that can of worms, but we were talking about that earlier this offseason, depending on what the Twins have in store. They recently took Joe Ryan off the trade block. Are they going to put him back on? I don't know what the Twins are doing. I don't even think they know what they're doing. But I'll tell you what, Yankees fans are pissed right now. And I'm reading and scrolling my timeline, and I'm loving every single freaking second of it. They are pissed. Everyone's making moves, including the New York Mets, and they're not. It's just as simple as that. Shout out to Travis as well with the super chat and super sticker. Shout out to everybody in this chat right now commenting. Every Mets fan that, shows up and supports and gives their thoughts and opinions. We definitely appreciate the input as well. Yeah, I do think that pitching is going to have to be one of the next dominoes to fall with this team, though. I still can't get the idea of Freddie Peralta out of my mind. I just think that is a really good fit depending on what they will ask for in return. For Peralta, we heard that they want a MLB ready young replacement for him. We were talking
Easy.
about Brandon Sproat.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that very easily, especially if you're showing a willingness to be serious about this season. If you go out there and get one more bat, if Freddie Peralta's out there for the taking, you do it. If they're willing to throw in, I don't know why they would, but if they're willing to throw in McGill, you do it, right? Yeah. That's a good back end of the bullpen with Williams, Weaver, and McGill. I'm getting ahead of myself, but at this point, this Bo Bichette signing, we're asking for the moon now.
Let's go.
That's it. That's the type
all
of
in Mets,
timing we're
baby.
on.
All in Mets. Let's go. Let's go. I was
so
pissed
yeah,
off
man.
24 hours ago. Now I'm excited again. Now, we show life.
We were so down bad yesterday, Rob. On my video that I dropped on your stream that you did, I was livid. I honestly was like, I was at a point where I was going to say, and this was never going to be true, but I was like, I'm not going to even watch baseball in 2026. But, we always come back around. We'll always watch this team no matter what's going on. But yeah, man, it just, yeah, right. It just depends on, for me, the level of aggressiveness that David Stearns is going to deploy with the prospects moving forward. Yeah. I really hope that he is serious about trading some of these guys, and not just the prospects, but, if it takes Beatty to get a deal done, I understand that people want him here for the long run, and I get it. But if you find the right deal for a guy that's under control for a little bit, like a Jarren Duran, I think you have to make that deal. and it's never ending too. Like Vientos, like what purpose is he going to serve? Is he going to be the DH if Polanco's playing first? Is Beatty going to play first if, these SNY projections of the Mets lineup are accurate? That moves Polanco to DH. You've got no room for Vientos.
Yeah.
Luis Angel Acuna is never going to hit his stride. We see this guy knocking the cover off the baseball in the league that he's in right now, the winter league that he's in right now. And you think he's really going to do that and replicate, the tail end of that great season he had when Lindor went down? He probably can at some point, but he needs regular, consistent at-bats, which he
100%.
did not get last season. And he looked pretty awful, with the inconsistent at-bats. Ronnie Mauricio, I mean, the guy has all the potential and talent in the world, not going to make a difference on this team that has no room for him. I'm sorry. These guys that are here that have graduated from the prospect level and are MLB ready but are still considered young talent, they are better off in different uniforms, because right now with the timing of this team, they are not going to be put into a situation where they're going to succeed off the bench for the Mets in 2026. So you got to get it done. I mean, there should be no questions. If the Mets and Steve Cohen were pissed off and David Stearns was pissed off enough to go get Bichette, you need to be pissed off enough to get rid of some of this excess talent that you have to continue to make this team better. And that's just the bottom line. That's my true feelings at this point.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know what, though? Look, you talk about, if Beatty has to get moved, I think you have to move him. I know there's a risk there, but you're not trading every infield prospect. You're just not. So if Beatty's gone, you have a plethora of possible third base prospects, or guys that are still on the major league roster that were former prospects that some of them might still be here after the offseason is over and we get into the season. So if Beatty has to be in the deal, I'm sorry, if it's Beatty and Sproat to get Freddie Peralta, if that's stopping you from getting Freddie Peralta, then you know what? What are we doing then? Then why get Bichette then? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think Explosive just asked me, are you not going to be mad at David Stearns anymore? I'm not over the moon yet about David Stearns, right? This was a good signing. I love the aggressive pivot, but this move requires more moves. There's a huge logjam in this roster right now, right? Let's say Mauricio is back in the minors, or Acuna. One of them have to be. These guys are sitting on the bench. Chris just talked about, which he made a great point. With, if somebody's at first base and Polanco's the DH, where is Vientos playing? These guys are not good bench players, right? Vientos is only going to come up every now and then in late situations with an at bat, ice cold. We've seen this already with Mauricio, with Acuna, and Vientos. If they don't play, they're an ice cold bat and they're not good at it. And that's the Mets' fault. That's not their fault. They've all performed at some point in whatever, professional area they were in, minor leagues, on the Mets itself, when they were playing. So if they play every day, they got to get used to that. Now, they should be a baseball player and, always be ready, because you're not always guaranteed a job. Obviously, the Mets know that. But we have to understand that this move is a nice move, but not moving some of these guys makes it that much harder for Carlos Mendoza to manage a game. Because what did we see him do last year? He had no idea who to put in the lineup on an everyday basis. Who's playing third? Who's playing second? Who's playing DH? Multiple guys sat down all the time. Didn't Mauricio in September sit down for like 2 weeks straight without even a start? Like, you can't do that to these guys. These guys are too young and so used to playing every day. All you're doing is hurting their development, and also you're hurting their value. And that is why this type of move is great with more moves to come, right? Signing Bellinger, that's awesome. You're filling a hole in the outfield. But the infield is where you can use some assets, not all, but some, to get a Freddie Peralta, to maybe even go try to entice the Tigers to trade Skubal, because they're both rentals. I'd rather go after Skubal, but Peralta's perfectly fine. This is where you can get better without, overhauling your farm system. because you don't have to do that. You have an abundance of infielders and two pitching prospects that we know that team in the Brewers would want a ready-made player or pitcher. And it seems like it's sounding like Brandon Sproat. Again, if you got to throw Beatty or Vientos or Mauricio or Acuna, none of those guys should stop you because none of them have been good enough long enough to stay with this team and not make that trade. So great trade. Great signing, but it would be a lukewarm signing in my opinion if you don't do more to better this team, especially in the pitching rotation, in the starting rotation.
You can't run it back with what you had last year, especially after adding Bichette. It just doesn't make sense. I agree with you. That's why I started this off by saying, this is a move where it signals more things to come, whether it's a signing or whether it's a trade or whether it's both. To what degree, we don't know until it happens. I don't think many reporters probably do know at this point, but you don't just sign Bichette and let's be very honest about this. He's a great bat, but $42 million for Bichette is absolutely ridiculous. Like that's an overpay, but that's what they had to do.
Correct.
The Dodgers, with what the Mets were willing to pay, had to go above and beyond. You think Kyle Tucker's worth $60 million? Hell no. He's not even worth probably 45, but he got that because that's the precedent that the New York Mets set and that the Dodgers had to meet and beat. And so that's the case here with Bichette. These teams are doing what they need to do, whether it's right or wrong, whether they're worth this or not, whatever, they're doing what they need to do. So I agree. More moves are coming and they can't come soon enough because, a lot of fans are antsy. A lot of fans want to know what the configuration of this, infield is going to be. You have John Heyman going out there and saying that the Mets view Brett Beatty in a light that he can play multiple different positions, even third base on some occasion. They're talking about left field for Brett Beatty, and I think that he got some reps in the minor leagues at left field. I'm sure he would be okay there, but that's not something you really want to bank on. I don't want to bank on it at least. So yeah, I don't buy it. And by the way, let me just refresh everybody's memories with how the Mets do this, right? They go ahead and they get the replacement of these players, right? They did this with Jeff McNeil. They did the same exact thing with Jeff McNeil. They traded for Marcus Semien, and they had Jeff McNeil on the roster for the longest time. What did they say with Jeff McNeil when everybody was like, you guys have to trade him, right? They said, no, he can play first base, right? We're going to try him out in multiple different positions. He's versatile. He can play left field, right? They traded him. I think the same thing is going to happen here with Brett Beatty. I'm going out on a limb because I think Brett Beatty at his peak is a much better offensive weapon than Jeff McNeil at this point of his career. But I just think that the Mets just do this. They just gas up these players and say, no, I don't care how many infielders we have. We can just move them around the diamond. And then they're like, and then they find trades for them. Correct. And so that's what I expect to happen. And I see some.
And you know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Value would never be higher right now.
It's at its highest.
Yeah. And it's the best time to trade him, to be quite honest with you. He hasn't proven it enough to warrant him staying. And oh my God, we traded Beatty. And I'm a big Beatty fan. Everybody knows that. Like, you can't stop a trade because the possibility of Beatty, it's his own fault that it took him 3 years to figure it out. All right. And there's still no guarantee. Like, why can't Beatty do what Vientos did last year? It's a very big possibility. I'm not risking that. I'm not. You have your infield already. You really do. Even if you don't want Polanco playing first base and he's going to be a first baseman at this moment, or at least a platoon with Vientos at this point, you got your infield set. Like, that's it. Like, Beatty, Vientos, Mauricio Acuna, every one of these guys need to be put in a deal somehow, at least one or two of them, to alleviate the balance on this roster, at least when it comes to the infielders. And it can still get you a player that you desperately need. And it is a little concerning, though, even though this player is on the market, that it's January 16th. We're a month away from pitchers and catchers, and this rotation is the same. that's concerning because you can't keep on losing out on these players, right? We saw Ranger Suarez go to the Red Sox. That's one person off the board. Even though I don't know if the Mets are going to go there anyway, but if Framber Valdez goes off the board in the next couple of days, that makes it that much harder to get a top line starter because now you're definitely going on the trade market. And guess who knows that? The team you're trying to trade with for that pitcher. And, right now, you might have a little bit of an upper hand saying, hey, we just got Bichette. Every one of our prospect infielders or former prospect infielders are available. Pick one and we'll give you Spurt along with that. And maybe if they can throw in talent, Trevor McGill, great. Do you want another lower level prospect? Hell yeah. Let's go. Let's get it done. Let's solidify this rotation and this bullpen. And now we're talking about a solid bullpen, a top two solid, I would say probably a pretty good rotation, and the lineup that a lot of people can have holes, opinions on, but just because they're not what people with all the home runs that everybody was talking about with Nimmo, Alonso, and all that stuff, it's still a lot of guys that can hit 20 to 25 home runs easily, and it lengthens the lineup, and that's more important than just 1 through 4 hitting a ton of home runs.
I see Dolo is saying here, let's be honest, Stearns hit the panic button and got Bichette after losing Tucker. It was always a plan B for them. We just mentioned the Will Salmon report. They had this going with Bichette, and they had meetings with him during the GM meetings. That was in November. He was always going to be their backup option. So it's not a panic move, really, if you have priorities A, B, and C. I think we all can agree we'd probably rather have Tucker a little bit more than Bichette on this team because he fits what the Mets needed defensively, and you can argue he's probably a better bat, right? And so that's fine. There's nothing you could do about him going to the Dodgers. You offered a competitive offer. I don't think Brett Beatty. I don't think Bo Bichette is that bad of a consolation prize here, especially for a short-term parameter that you wanted to stick to and an already established relationship that you've had for the past 2.5 months. So it's not a panic move. This was always set in place in case they were not able to land a guy like Schwarber way back when, which was probably never going to happen. And then also most recently, Kyle Tucker. So that's the way that I view it. I know a lot of fans are going to say that it is a panic move. I just don't see how you can call it that if this was already in the works for a long time, and that is confirmed and backed up by Will Salmon. And I also see a lot of people here talking about Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen's fine. I'd be interested in him for a little bit of a short-term deal. He's coming off of a very bad 2025 campaign, really good 3 seasons before that with the Diamondbacks, but he's another guy that has a QO attached to him. So that brings us back to the same Framber Valdez question and equation of, are the Mets going to go ahead and sign 2 QO attached players in this offseason? Gallen at this point, that's a huge, it's a risk knowing that you need to go ahead and get solidified talent and hopefully players that are carrying momentum over from the previous season, like Freddie Peralta is coming off of one of the best seasons of his career. Taking a chance on Gallen isn't the worst thing in the world, but it comes with a question mark. It really does. And is that something that the Mets are going to want to chance again in their rotation? The one silver lining of the Zach Gallen conversation is that no matter how you draw it up, he is an innings eater. I think he was at 192 last season. Before that, it was a little bit lower at 148. Before that, I think it was just over 200. So he will provide you innings. It's just, can he figure something out? You would hope with an entirely new staff here in New York on the pitching side of things in Queens if they were to do that. I don't think they're going to go after Zach Gallen. I would be shocked if they do. Would I be upset if they do? No, because he has shown consistent success. It just didn't happen in 2025 with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, correct. Like I said, I see Zach Gallen right now as a number 3 at the very, at the least. Obviously he could have an ace type year. We've seen it before, but you can't rely on Zach Gallen to be a top rotation guy. Like if that's your big pitching move, you're kind of waiting for it to be a disaster because he has to be great to even make this rotation a little bit better. But yeah, the innings are important. I think way too many Met fans are not paying attention with guys that can throw a bunch of innings. That's why Framber Valdez makes sense as well. I know with the comp picks and all that stuff, but getting Framber Valdez, why I was always in on getting him was because he's a 190 inning guy. Like, can he fall off the map next year? Sure, but don't have that argument when he hasn't done it yet. If he does it next year, all right, we're in trouble. But because he's been doing it and consistently has been doing 30, 31 starts, 32 starts a year, I'm not going to say he's going to fall off the mat. You can get guys that can throw 180, 190 innings. That makes everybody else better. It definitely makes your bullpen at least a little bit more, better, only because they're not throwing as many innings. You can count on that guy going 6, 7 innings, even when they don't have their best stuff, which helps the bullpen. Let's say in Valdez's starts, you're only using 2 or 3 guys a night, while you can use 5 guys on another night. Or it's lessening the burden on the bullpen that was destroyed in the first half and the second half of this with this team last year. But look, Zach Gallen isn't a bad move, but it still needs to be a Peralta. It still needs to be a Valdez. It still needs to be a Skubal. It makes no sense to sign him and tell me this guy's the top of the rotation. It's stupid. Like that's an addition with a top line starter. That would be awesome. But how far are the Mets willing to go with this payroll? Like, that's the other question as well. Because they're over what, 300 million easily now. They're way over.
They're at like 330
something, right?
338, 340.
Pre-tax already.
Yeah.
So okay, then clearly Steve Cohen doesn't care at this point now. I think I'm going to say this, and I know people are going to be like, "Oh, here you go, killing David Stearns again." I think Steve Cohen was absolutely pissed they didn't get Tucker, because he hasn't spoken on X forever, and he comes out with the Pope nonsense and the smoke, all that stuff. I think he thought he had Tucker in the bag, to be quite honest with you, because he put himself out there, and the last time they lost out on Yamamoto, they pivoted somewhere else quickly. And I'm not saying that David Stearns didn't do the work here with Bichette, but this was approved by Steve Cohen long ago with Bichette. Like, this was a situation where David Stearns did not have to pick up the phone and get the approval of Steve Cohen. He already knew this was happening. And with Steve Cohen being pissed off, which I think he very much was, that Tucker went to the Dodgers, he's like, fuck this. Like, this is why I think it's a whole new ballgame, Chris. Nothing about David Stearns, liking him or not. I think Steve Cohen wasn't happy with what was going on in this offseason, and his wife was getting killed and jumped off social media. He hasn't been on social media and getting killed on social media. I think that he tried to stay on the back burner this offseason, which he said he was going to do, and he already did it. And I think this is a whole new ballgame now again. I think that no player you talk about is off limits at this point, because Steve Cohen is now directly in the room with anybody that can be a big name coming to the New York Mets.
I think he's always been, though, Rob. You don't think Steve?
I don't know.
I think he has.
He's in a room with, hey, let's go trade Brandon Nimmo, or let's not even give an offer to Pete Alonso.
He's been doing this since he was the owner, though. I mean, with Lindor, with Correa, with
like a lot of the big players, sure, but like it felt like the market came to the Mets, which David Stearns is known for, with Kyle Tucker, right? This wasn't a situation where David Stearns was the aggressive one and throwing a short-term deal 3 weeks ago. When they were, kissing Bellinger's ass and courted him, they could have courted Kyle Tucker, and they should have gave this offer 4 weeks ago. And maybe you would have had Kyle Tucker a couple of weeks ago, but he allowed the market to come, and we heard nothing about Steve Cohen being in any of this information, anywhere near negotiations. And I know he's involved, but it felt like he jumped into the mix where he didn't like where this negotiations were going. And Steve, when we found out the report that Steve Cohen jumped into this negotiations, all of a sudden the 4th year was offered to Kyle Tucker, not just the 3rd year. It just felt like he jumped in and says, David, let me figure this out. I know it sucks because you kind of pushing Stearns to the side here, the guy you're telling to run the team. But we know Steve Cohen loves to do this. He is not afraid to do it, which I guess I like. But again, he's saying one thing and his actions are saying another. Which again, you got the player in Bo Bichette, but you didn't get Kyle Tucker. And I think Steve Cohen jumped in when he didn't like where the Tucker movement was going, because it didn't seem like the 3-year deal was going to even be a thought that Kyle Tucker was going to take it. It seemed like when Steve Cohen jumped in, the 4th year happened, the $20 million more of that total contract came in, and
I mean, that's a theory. We don't know that for
sure,
sure. That's a theory for sure. I
I
get
like that
where you're
theory.
going with that. Listen, 3 years versus, the original 3-year deal that the Mets had that Jim Duquette said, and then all of a sudden a 4th year came about. That very well could have been Cohen. At the end of the day, this guy has the final say. But we did also hear a report of, I forgot who it was that said it. It was one of the major reporters that said, clearly this has been a very methodical approach from the Mets perspective this entire offseason. But make no mistake about it, Steve Cohen has given the green light to David Stearns to go 350 and even blow past the $350 million mark in terms of payroll for 2026. That's why I don't think the Mets care, and I don't think David Stearns is operating under the assumption that he's just going to stop at Bo Bichette, given the payroll being at $340 million, give or take. They know that they need more, whether it's free agency or whether it's bringing in a guy like Peralta for $8 million. That's still money going onto your payroll. And Steve Cohen has already pre-approved that. I do think that David Stearns definitely does deserve credit for this deal, though, because like I said, going back to the GM meetings, this is a guy that David Stearns has laid eyes on and scouted and is like, okay, if plans A and B don't happen, I have my preference in players, but if it comes down to it and we strike out on the other guys, then we will go ahead and get Bo Bichette, which is exactly what happened. But, with what you're saying with Steve Cohen, I don't disagree. I mean, Steve Cohen definitely could have stepped in and said, hey, listen, we're at 3 years. The only way to make this at least competitive, with the Dodgers in the background, maybe, and even with the Blue Jays at that point, because who knows if the Mets even knew about the Dodgers, and their interest level, then maybe Cohen said, add the 4th year. That's perfectly fine. But at that point, what is his stopping point? If you thought that Steve Cohen fully took over those negotiations, you would have thought that he would have offered a 5th year for, I don't know, $300+ million. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting thought. I think these guys are still both working in tandem. I don't think, though, for a second that the actual structure of this roster right now and what has come to fruition of having Marcus Semien here, Polanco, Bo Bichette, I don't think that is Steve Cohen's doing. I don't think that's Steve Cohen's doing at all. So, it's interesting. At the end of the day, doesn't matter who's actually leading this.
Just get the players.
You just get the players, man. Who gives a shit? Just get the players, man. That's it.
But Wilfredo said it right here, and I'm going to put the comment up. Mets has a lot of trade bait with Mauricio Acuna, Vientos, Beatty, Sanger, Peterson, and prospects. 3 and beyond. Yeah, agree. But we've been talking about this the whole show, right? Is David Stearns going to do it? Because look, he signed Bo Bichette. Right? I'm not giving no credit to David. He deserves credit for this one, no doubt. I said it on the breaking news stream. I'm saying it right now. I still think Stearns has a lot of work to do to earn all of our trust, but he has all these trade options to make moves to better this team. I like this deal. He was either going to get Tucker or Bo Bichette, clearly in his mind. So that's out there. But that is the question of the day. Is he going to use the abundance of of assets that he has in his roster and the farm system to make this team better? If that's an outfielder because they can't get Cody Bellinger, or is that a top line starting pitcher? He's got to do it. There isn't a question of, he should do it. There's a percentage of, there's a 25% chance. No. It needs to be 100%. He needs to be in the works right now. And I'm going to be right here today. It's 8 o'clock at night, after 8. We're past an hour already. I'm going to say this right now. You want to hear a positive David Stearns take? If he makes a big trade by trading prospects, he's done the 2 things I asked for him to gain my trust, is make a big signing. He did that. I don't care who's the give all the credit to. Don't care. Bichette is here. David Stearns is getting credit for it, in my opinion. If he makes a big trade with finally moving prospects or abundance of infielders on this roster to get a starting pitcher or a top outfielder here, he's going to get all the credit in the world for me, because you know why? That means he is working on improving the team with proven players. That is what I've always cared about. I like proven talent more than prospects. I understand the way baseball is going now. You got to infuse prospects and younger players and controllable players. 100% agree. The Mets can still do that by adding players on this team. You don't have to throw all the young kids to the Wolves and hope they perform. And if they don't perform, you're a 75-win team instead of being a 90-win team if they all perform. Like, that's a huge risk. The proven players have a better chance of having a better season for you overall because it's been proven. So, again, if David Stearns makes a trade, again, a big trade, it can be a starting pitcher, which I prefer at this point, or a top outfielder like a Durant. That's it. David Stearns earned my trust. Now, can he lose it quickly? Yeah, wait until the trade deadline. Then we'll have another conversation about that. But he can redeem himself with the disaster of the offseason that he had until this point. Like, this wasn't good. I'm not against breaking up the core. I was never against that, right? More people were than me. But you also got to replace that core with talent to at least have similar production or close to better production at this point. And so far, he has a little bit of my trust. A little bit. This was a great move. Aggressive pivot. He didn't wait 3 weeks to get Bichette. That would have been like, all right, come on. Like, you clearly try to, this snail's pace when it came to trying to get this guy. But it was less than 24 hours. So there is no way I'm not giving David Stearns credit here, because this is a good move. But he's got more to do. And until he does that, he isn't on the Christmas list yet. He's on the naughty list still in my book.
Rob, that's funny. I was just sitting there listening to that rant, and I just had to smile, because I feel like that's what people come into these chats and
Seriously, I get comments all the time. Hey, Rob, like last night when Tucker went to the Dodgers, I think I had a what the hell? I had a hot stove stream for today, this one. And somebody, I forgot who it was, but somebody commented, "Hey, I think you should get on right now, because we want to see you rant." And I get email. I swear to God, Chris, I get emails all the time. Rob, I subscribed for your rants, and I'm like, that's nice, and I appreciate that, but I don't want to. All right, maybe positive rants, but I mean, are positive rants fun? I don't think so. I think the negativity sells in this country, in this world, let alone, right? It does. Like, let's be honest. When the Mets were going through a disaster and slowly choking last season, like, that's when we got the more views on our channels. Like, no joke. Like, it's the truth. But honestly, I would love to come up here, and I know Chris would, and I know everybody in the chat. We would love to be positive every single day. But last night, prior to the Tucker signing, there wasn't a lot of positivity with this team, and I got upset with some people saying, "Why are you always negative?" And I come back with it. Listen, when they give me positive results, you'll get positive attitude. You get a positive stream. This has been a positive stream, right? I mean, I don't throw negativity in there, of course, because of David Stearns, but it's a reality. Like, Chris, you're not going to lie to everybody, right? You're going to give your honest opinion if it's positive or negative. I will never lie to you guys and say, "Hey, I'm going to be positive just to be positive," when there's no positive results for this team. I want to be honest. Like, I think that's the whole point, is to be honest. If I'm going to lie to you guys, what's the hell the point of this channel or your channel or anybody's channel? Like, I give my feeling, if you like it or not. Like, that's your opinion. That's my opinion. But I'm just real with this. Like, I'm a diehard like everybody else. Sometimes I'm pissed off, or most of the time I'm pissed off. But I would like to be positive 100% of the time. But this team needs to deserve that positivity before we throw it out there, all willy-nilly.
Yeah, no, and you know, we both come on here and share our feelings. My rants are not even half as good as yours, so I'll give you that credit, and that's for sure. But you know, I've been pretty honest about, you know, this 2 to 3 year plan of what I think David Stearns could be thinking about. You know, and I've been pretty frustrated too myself because it's been an off season, the majority of the off season where we just didn't know where this off season was leading to. We didn't know what the plan was, and the uncertainty factor definitely frustrated this fan base and it frustrated the hell out of me. So we're starting to see some things come into fruition and come into the fold and kind of getting a clearer picture, but it's not 100% clear even still with where the Mets are going to go now. And that's what we are all waiting in anticipation for. And hopefully it is going to be a good plan and even more good pivot points, because I think that this Bichette deal is the start of something good to finish out this off season. It's crazy that we're talking about that right here on January 16th because there are still a lot of moves to make. The only other thing that I had for this stream is you know, we were talking about Zach Gallen, but another familiar face that is on the free agent market that is also an innings eater. And I have been, you know, people have brought this up on our streams for quite some time now, and I do not want any part of this name, but I would understand if they went and did it under the assumption that they got a frontline starter. And that is also former Toronto Blue Jay, Chris Bassitt. What do you think about Chris Bassitt?
I'm okay with it. I think he's a gamer. Like, he doesn't have the best stuff, but he has like 27 pitchers. We all seen it, right? He's a guy that if you don't need him to be your number 2 or number 3, and he's in the back of your rotation, I think he'll be fine. Like, I know what he said after the playoff game, or even before the playoff game with the Mets, that you know it's hard to play in New York and all that stuff, and he showed like he was scared shitless. He was more important to that 2022 team than he would be in the 2016 if you get a top line starter here. You know what I'm saying? So he ain't going to be as important as he was in 2022 when he ended up being the most important guy during the season, and then he, you know, shit the bed in the postseason. So I'd be okay with that. But like you said, I'd be okay with that if you get a top line starter. I'd rather have him than Cody Bellinger, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me because I don't like how his Mets tenure ended.
Yeah, of
And, you
course.
know, I get that he was being honest and I'm sure he has no hard feelings towards New York, but I just never got the sense that he liked New York in the first place. And he is like a middle of the rotation type of arm. He's been there before. He's a super veteran now. He's like 36 years old. It'll be a short-term deal. There's no QO attached, obviously, clearly with the age there. So it wouldn't really excite me. Like
No,
if you're like, if you do that, you need to trade Senga, Peterson, or both because like there's just way too many 3s and 4s in this rotation. And you take a look at Manaya, who's going to be here. If he's not going to the bullpen, I don't think he is. Clay Holmes, another guy like at that point, you're stacking too many mid-rotation guys. At least with Gallen, we know that he has the upside of
yep.
being maybe a number 2. I mean, he's not an ace. He won't be an ace, but he has the upside. With Chris Bassitt, you're looking at the upside being a 3, and that's best case scenario. So, you know, I'm good on Chris Bassitt. But I know that there are fans out there because I've seen the comment section. I see, you know, Johnny in the chat right now saying yes to Chris Bassitt, while a lot of other people agree with me and say no. You know, I see the argument for both sides. It's just another interesting name. I would be curious if the Mets took the chance on the reunion, but I wouldn't. I don't want that.
Yeah, again, I'm not gonna, you know, go crazy about it either. But you know, before we end the stream, gotta ask you right before we go. Not the Giants, but I mean,
Oh, I was gonna
when
say,
is Harbaugh going to sign that contract? You
get
know,
the
like
deal done, man. I'm sweating now. I'm starting to sweat.
so. But no, it's Mets related. We know the Mets are going to make another move, right? It's obvious that they're going to have to. I like that Rangers sweater by the way, the Patrick division.
Yes,
Ooh,
sir.
that. All right. So I'm sorry, just way of course here. The next move for the New York Mets will be what?
Oh my goodness. We played this game last week and we
Yeah,
thought it was going to be like, you know, Tucker, or you thought it was going to be Peralta actually.
yeah.
And we got Bichette instead. So a little bit later than we envisioned, but it still happened. Dude, I think that it's time for a starting pitcher, man. I think that this is, I don't know if it's going to be this week. These trades take time to materialize. You're working with, a pesky team. In this case of my answer and Freddie Peralta, it's this pesky organization, man, in the Brewers. They don't find success and continued success in the regular season, of course, but they are not like continuous winners by just recycling and getting garbage in return for these moves that they make to replace the guys that they don't want to pay. They are going to be asking for a hell of a deal. It probably will start off with the name Jonah Tong. I'm sure the Mets will say no. We'll see if the Brewers would be willing to take Brandon Sproat. I would do the trade. And so I would think that starting pitching is going to be the priority for the New York Mets in the next move. We don't know how they view Brett Baty situationally and positionally for 2026 yet. I still expect Brett Baty to be traded. Get this deal with Freddie Peralta done. This guy has been the most obvious answer for this team since this offseason started. I get it. The inconsistencies of Freddie Peralta coupled with his playoff struggles, especially last season, they don't excite some people, and I get that. But barring anything unforeseen happening with Skubal this offseason, you really aren't going to come close to a better pitcher than Freddie Peralta. That is the plan B option. And you are going to give up a whole lot less when you are playing into still the 1 to 2 year plan that is these contracts that David Stearns has given out. And the same thing still applies for Bo Bichette with the opt-outs that he has. Freddie Peralta is a very cheap $8 million salary cap hit or payroll hit, whatever you want to say, and then also just the prospects that would go back in return. And by the way, there has been some rumors that Freddie Peralta would be open to an extension immediately. And that is the thing. You don't trade for Peralta without knowing that he is open to an extension. And if he is, you get that done. You make this deal, you trade for him, you get that done. And I don't think he's one of those guys that's going to hold out to next season, because why would he? He's coming off of a career year, ladies and gentlemen. The time to sign an extension is now for him.
Yeah.
And so that is, if you go into 2026, he risks an injury, he risks whatever, a down year. He's losing a lot of money and leaving a lot of money on the table. So he's going to want to cash in now. If he's open to an extension, get the job done, get Freddie Peralta. That's my final take there.
Yeah, and obviously that would be an excellent move. The reason why I'm going to say this player is because I think it takes time for those trades to develop, like you said. But we all know Stearns has talked to these teams already. Obviously, he talked to the Brewers about Peralta. He talked to other teams about other starting pitchers. So, there might be some names already thrown out there already, and, that it can happen tomorrow, as quickly as the Bo Bichette signing happened. But I'm going to go Cody Bellinger. And the only reason why I said that is because reports are coming out that they're in on Cody Bellinger. And again, as I said earlier, I think Steve Cohen is not very happy with the Kyle Tucker situation. And I think with David Stearns being smart and aggressive with the Bo Bichette situation, I also think Steve Cohen had a part in that, saying, hey, let's fuck the Phillies in the process. I think he's pissed. And I think he's going to not spend stupidly, but he's going to find a way on a short-term deal to land Cody Bellinger. I think it's going to be a 3-year deal with an opt-out after the first year, $40 million per year for the Cody Bellinger sweepstakes. I think they're going to take him away from the Yankees, who are just hovering and waiting for somebody to sign a contract for them without them being aggressive. The Mets are going to take him away from the Yankees, back-to-back years, taking their outfielders away and making the fans even cry even more than they already have. Cody Bellinger will be a New York Met, and I do think a trade's going to happen with a starting pitcher, but I think that's going to take a little bit more time. Cody Bellinger is going to wear orange and blue, I think, when the weekend's over. I truly believe that. Like, I'm feeling good about it right now. Maybe I'm just, getting way too positive here, and I know that's shocking, but I think Cody Bellinger is going to be the guy. I really think Cody Bellinger is going to be a guy, because I think where there's smoke, and I'm not using the Steve Cohen reference, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I really think with the reports coming out, and Steve Cohen being very much annoyed about the Tucker situation and coming out of the woodworks on X, I think Cody Bellinger is going to be a New York Met.
I think you're going to have to overpay for him. I can definitely see it happening if he's willing to take a Bo Bichette-esque deal. You might even have to go to like $45 million a year for Cody Bellinger, maybe even plus. I don't think the Mets give a
I
shit.
don't care. Yeah,
I don't think they
anymore.
care. I don't
Nope.
think they care. I really don't.
They might have cared. They may have cared about a month ago. I think the chains are off, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So make it happen. Give me Bellinger, give me Peralta, and I'm ready to rock. And maybe another mid-level starter. If you want to trade Senga or Peterson, be my guest, and let's rock and roll, man. Let's rock and roll. I love it. But the thing is, though, the last thing here is that, you know, if you do go get Bellinger, I mean, I guess that probably seals the deal on Beatty being your first baseman, right?
Yeah,
because what do you do with Brett Beatty at that point?
Well, what would you do with Vientos? DH? I mean, you can
because if Beatty's your first baseman, Polanco's your DH, and Vientos is the odd man out. So I mean, someone's so that, and that's what I'm saying is that leaves that question also. If the Mets do somehow, I still think it's a long shot, but if they do somehow get Bellinger, the corresponding move to trade, you know, Vientos or Beatty would probably have to happen. I don't think they're going to go into the season with one of those guys on the bench. It's just not feasible.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what they want to do with Bellinger if they get him, right? Is he going to play center field? Is he going to play left? Is he going to play first? Like, I think that helps out the situation where Bellinger gives a lot of options for the Mets, right? Because if you sign Bellinger, you might not, if they're serious about Beatty being a big utility guy or playing left field or first base, you could still do that with them and DH either, you know, most likely Polanco, and then Vientos is trade bait at this point. And, you know,
Bellinger just plays first and Beatty just goes in left field. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that's the best idea, but
that's not the best idea. But again, Stearns already caused this problem, even though it's not a problem with the lineup when it comes to Bo Bichette, but he caused this problem. Let's be honest. Signing Bo Bichette made this a lot more difficult to figure out at this point where these guys are going to play. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to a Mets Hot Stove, where we actually talk about an actual big signing for the New York Mets as they sign Bo Bichette for a 3-year deal. They get a bat. They probably need one more. Who are they going to go get next? We'll wait to see, guys, on the next Hot Stove show. Hopefully we're talking about it, guys. Have a great night. Let's go Mets, and see you next time, guys. Have a good night.
More moves. Let's go.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life.